from the sky. When the boys begin to play, you will see our hanky sway. When out there on the field, we know they come to work. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins, our mighty, mighty Dolphins.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest football team. We take the ball from goal to goal like no one's ever seen. We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. 'Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, 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 Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphins Show, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
And we are here on a very special night, Brain, because for the second straight show, it's not just me and you. For the second straight show, we got a special guest here on the Same Old Dolphins Show. So for everybody listening on demand and everybody watching live, and Aaron, please give a warm Same Old Dolphins Show welcome to our special guest. He is El Capitan, Chris Adams of the Fins Tailgate. Chris, how are you?
What's happening? What's going on? I appreciate
Here he is.
What a red carpet rollout, man. I wasn't prepared for all that. So
No,
thank
man,
you
we
so
don't do
much.
anything halfway over here.
No,
We
I
do
see
it
that.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Fireworks and everything. Great.
That's right. Let's go.
I'm excited to go from the conductor of the Chris Grier hype train to El Capitan this week.
Yeah, there we go. Because we were talking backstage a little bit. You're not as high on Chris Grier as I am. I guess you have your doubts.
Yeah, and we're going
You
to
could
have
say
that
that.
conversation coming up. That's a nice little teaser. See, it's
Yeah.
almost like you got somebody on the show tonight that knows what he's doing here with us. Yeah, that's a little teaser for what we're going to get into in a little bit here on the show. But so a special episode. Obviously, we're coming up to the draft later this week, and it's not as exciting as a time as it's been the last couple of years. Dolphins don't have a bundle of picks in the first couple of rounds like they've had in the past few years. So we're going to have to wait a little while for the Dolphins make their first selection. So we're going to talk a little bit about the draft. We're going to talk about what it is that the Dolphins need to focus on. But, on this show, we're not big draft nicks. We've never been like huge draft guys. That's not kind of what we do here. But we're going to talk a little bit about what the areas that the Dolphins kind of need to explore filling in the draft are. Maybe we'll touch on some of those candidates there, but we're going to talk a little bit about the draft. We're going to talk about Chris Grier and what he has done so far, not just this offseason, but since he has been elevated to the role of general manager for the Miami Dolphins. And maybe we'll talk about some other things here in the world of the Miami Dolphins too. But either way, we're going to talk about it all here on the Same Old Dolphin Show. But before we go any further, quick reminder, if you're not doing so already, make sure you're following us on Twitter. I am at Amplified to Rock. He is at Aaron the Brain. He is at the Fins Tailgate. The show is at Same Old Dolphins. And make sure you download, rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere that you get your podcasts. And of course, you got to make sure that you are subscribed to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. So shout out to everybody watching live on YouTube. They're in the comments. They're here. We're loving it. We appreciate you. And if you're in the comments right now, go ahead and drop a line in the comments. Let us know who it is that you are looking for the Dolphins to draft at 102, or maybe you'd like them to package 102 and 125. Maybe some of the sevens move up a little bit. Tell us what you're looking for the Dolphins to do in the draft in the comments. If you're watching live, if you're listening on demand, let us know. Leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review. And tell us what you'd like the Dolphins to do in the draft. But of course, big thing, make sure you subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Smash the like button on this video. We appreciate you very much. And turn on notifications so you never miss a live episode from all of us at Dolphins Talk. So here we are. It's draft time. Draft time coming up for the Dolphins. And as I mentioned, not a ton of picks this year. Dolphins don't have their first pick until the tail end of the third round. That's pick number 102. They then have a 4th round pick, 125, and then they've got 2 7th-round picks, 224 and 247. So it's going to be probably quieter, but not necessarily, because Chris, as we've talked about sort of before we went live here, Chris Grier is known for making some moves when he is when the Dolphins are on the clock. Even a little bit before that, we know he likes to make moves on draft day. So are you expecting him to play it straight here, or do you think he's going to have a few tricks up his sleeve?
I think we've been really spoiled come draft time, Dolphins fans, for the last few years. We've controlled these drafts in one way or another. And really, not to just a little extra teaser on the Chris Grier subject, he's kind of changed the game a little bit on how people conduct themselves during the draft. Everyone's, I don't want to say they're copying his model, but between tearing the team down and stacking these draft picks, and the Browns kind of did some stuff like that, and so have the tanking with the Jaguars, which both those teams misuse those opportunities, I would say, in a lot of ways. Maybe not so much the Browns. We'll see how that works out. But I can expect Chris Grier to do something. Yeah, I wouldn't bet him to play it straight. Even in the mid rounds, he'll move something up or move something back or anything like that. I think it was today the Patriots traded a 5th round pick for a 6th and a 7th today. So that's just how they get down. I don't know why you would move it around like that, but that's why they like to do it. And Chris Grier has never idly sat by in a draft ever. So
yeah, he's pretty active on draft day. Brain, any thoughts on how Chris Grier is going to approach this one?
So look, none of us, I know Josh, you and I, we've talked for years that we're not big draft guys. Obviously, we get a little bit more excited when the Dolphins have a bunch of top 100 picks. So we get a little bit more into it, and breaking things down and listening to a lot of opinions. This year, obviously not one of those years. Chris, we were talking prior to the show here in our little production meeting, and you don't watch a lot of college either. So we're not big, we're not huge draft guys, but that doesn't mean that we don't have opinions on what this team should be doing in general going into this draft. And I know that, everybody is saying, look, we've got 2 needs, 3 needs, center, linebacker, running back. That's what everybody wants to see us do. Like, we've got 4 picks. Let's use him on those things. And I think it's important to note that when you look at what Chris Grier has done since he's been the GM, when he's reached on guys because he wants to fill a specific position, that's when the picks have not really turned out that great. When he reached on Austin Jackson because we needed a tackle, and he said, well, this is the top guy on our board at tackle, so we're going to take him even though, you know, he probably shouldn't be picked there. Well, here we are, the third year of Austin Jackson, and we're hoping that he can win a starting job. Some of us are hoping that he's not going to win the starting job because we've lost complete faith in him. We reached on Noah Igbenogany because Brian Flores said we need to have corners. And so they reached on him, even though the general consensus was he was not a first-round pick. That hasn't worked out. We traded up. Again, we were in desperate need of getting a tackle. We traded up and drafted Liam Eichenberg. Now, Liam Eichenberg, the jury's still out on him, but I think we would all sit here and say, looking at it right now, would you have traded an extra third round pick to move up into the second round and draft Liam Eichenberg? No, I don't think anybody would do that if we had to do it all over again. That said, when he's gone the route of taking the general consensus guy, Jalen Waddle, Jalen Phillips, it's worked out. I mean, even Javon Holland, I'll say this, was not necessarily the general consensus, but he was not a reach.
No.
But another guy that I think was a reach and a surprise last year was Hunter Long, and he couldn't even get on the field on a team that had, 5 tight ends. He couldn't beat out Durham Smythe and Adam Shaheen, or Sethan Carter for that matter. So, I mean, like when Chris Grier has reached on guys, it has not worked out. So I want to see him not pigeonhole himself into we've got to get a running back, a center, and a linebacker in this draft, because let's face it, you've got a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and 2 seventh-round picks. The odds are that these guys are not going to pan out if you reach on these guys. So I think what you have to do is you've got to take the best player available, because let's be honest, save for quarterback, I don't know that there's a single position that you would say, oh, the Dolphins don't need an upgrade there. The Dolphins don't need depth there. So whether it's offensive line, whether it's wide receiver, running back, defensive line, we certainly need depth. Obviously, if the best player on the board is a linebacker or a running back, then that's a beautiful thing. It falls right into your lap that way. But like, if the best player on the board is a defensive back, give me the defensive back. I think it's very important for the Dolphins to come out of this draft with some players that are going to make the team and can actually make a difference, as opposed to we're drafting a linebacker because it's a position of need, and the linebacker can't even beat out Brennan Scarlett.
But so this is the interesting thing, though, because what you're saying is the Dolphins need to draft a player in a position that they need in order to have somebody who is instantly a contributor, right? But where
No. What
that's not what I heard.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you get a player, there will be a spot for him, because there's not anywhere on this roster. Like, I mean, if let's say it's a wide receiver, it's not like he's got to beat out Cedric Wilson and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. He's just got to beat out Lynn Bowden Jr.
Yep. Like the kid, shout out Charlie Touche, and we talked about that. David Bell, who before we got Tyreek Hill was very high on my list. I know he fell far down the draft board because of his terrible combine numbers, but I agree. If you get a David Bell, whose job is he really taking? It's competition. I think a perfect storm would be, if, again, like you said, if it's a guy in a position of need and they happen to fall to us, that would be great. Like the center from Boston College, Alec Lindenstorm, he falls right to us in the third round, or if he's in striking distance in the third round and they use some of those sevenths or maybe something in the future to move up a couple of picks because they're worried about someone in between them and wherever they're trying to get, maybe taking them. I would find that to be savvy. We've seen us get jumped for the running back. What's his name that went to Denver last year when we all wanted that running back,
Javonte Williams.
Williams, you know, and we were like, God, dude, if we, you know, we got jumped right over there and we would have liked that. But Chris Grier's had good luck in the middle rounds as well. You know, Jerome Baker, even some of the guys as of recent always be contributors. Van Ginkel. Don't get me wrong. There's guys that never even made the cut, but he's done okay with the middle rounds. And I'm hoping, look, this is a terrible draft. Everybody's consensus says this is the best draft to have 4 draft picks in. And nobody wants the top 5 picks. Everyone's trying to trade out because the same value you're going to get in the first 5 to 10 picks, you're going to find between 10 and 20 potentially. You know, quarterback terrible. This draft has got inconsistent data because of COVID and how these kids came into college during COVID. And it really put this, to me, this was the year we were going to get the most inconsistent data from college players because of the last 2 years and how sports operated. And so most of them, not most of them, but some of them, it's just a flash in the pan, or other ones, they didn't get that shining moment because maybe things didn't work out for them. Maybe they're good, but then a 5-star recruit comes in and they split time. So there might be some hidden gems in here. But I do like the idea of BPA, but we got to hand it to Chris Grier. He's now made that possible where we are sitting in the 3rd round. You let fall who comes to you. If it was me, I'm hoping that in the 3rd round, Alec, the center from Boston, we're able to snag him up. Maybe Chad Muma, the linebacker everybody's high on. I think he's pretty good. Maybe in the 4th round, the running back, one of these running backs falls down further. And next thing you know, we've plugged in some role guys and we're good to go. You know, Kenyon Drake was picked in the 3rd round.
It's true. The Dolphins have had some success with late, right? I mean, so I asked the question on Twitter before the show, and shout out at SAME OLD DOLPHINS. If you're not following us, get on it, follow us. But I sent out a tweet earlier and I said, I was curious ahead of the show, what position would you like to see the Dolphins address at 102 or earlier or later if you think they should trade up or down? And I did my best to kind of represent everything, you know, so I had first category was running back and wide receiver. The second category was linebacker, defensive line. Third category was secondary. Fourth category was offensive line. 48.6% of respondents said linebacker or defensive line, right? 44% said offensive line, 6.4% receiver and running back, and 0.9% mentioned the secondary, which I thought was really interesting. That, you know, what's kind of what we talked about in our episode with Charlie Brain is that secondary. I was surprised to hear that was where he kind of was thinking in terms of guys that the Dolphins might be looking for in the 3rd round. But at any rate, somebody said, and I'll even give him a shout out here. JB on Twitter at JB0123WXYZ, which is a fun handle. He says, trade back to pick 113 and try middle linebacker like it's 1991 all over again. You know what he's referencing here, yes? He's referencing 1991, where the Dolphins at pick 113 in the 3rd round drafted a middle linebacker by the name of Brian Cox.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of that draft was, I mean, that was where the Dolphins drafted Randall Hill in the 1st round. And, you know, that famously did not go terribly well. I mean, really, in that 91 draft, Brian Cox was the only guy that the Dolphins got out of it. But listen, if the Dolphins at 102 this year or 125 got the next Brian Cox, I mean, you'd have to be pretty happy with how this draft turns out, wouldn't you?
Sure. I mean, Brian Cox was a solid player, fringe Pro Bowl player. And that's kind of what you're looking for. And like I said, if the chips fall in the right way, where the best you get a guy with that kind of upside at a position of need, then it's a no-brainer. But, you know, if the best linebacker on the board, you've got a 4th round grade on, and the best player on the board is, a corner, like, you're crazy. I mean, like, you got a 3rd round grade or even a 2nd round grade on a corner, and you're going to pass up on him because you're going to say that linebacker is a need. It's just insane to me, because first off, you can't have enough corners. Second of all, I mean, we're an injury away from relying on Noah Igbenogany this year. Look, I know everybody loves, that we've got X and we've got Byron Jones and we've got Javon Holland, and, Rowe is a solid safety, and Brandon Jones plays his role. And those 5 guys are like, that's your starting secondary. But you're going to have injuries, and you're going to need to rely on the guys behind them. God forbid, you have a serious injury to a guy like X or Byron Jones. Like, you've got to have a contingent. And that's not to say that you're drafting a guy in the 3rd round and saying, we're expecting this guy to be the contingency plan for Xavier Howard or anything like that. But you've just got to get players, because you could get a linebacker, and if he sucks, what difference does it make that he's a linebacker?
Yeah, you're not going to try to get one to let him sit and simmer. Hopefully he's somebody that can, take some snaps and, who knows, maybe even win the starting job as it goes down. I see what you're saying. As far as DBs go, I think fans feel very comfortable with the DB room because of Javon Holland, Brandon Jones playing a good, clip in the safety role. Nick Needham, we know, is versatile, and he even played some safety last year, so we feel comfortable with that. And Trill Williams, everyone's really high on as far as him making his presence felt. And we do all of the great work out of our secondary unit with our first overall pick, not first overall, but one of our 1st round picks in Noah Igbenogany never being on the field. If we can get any juice out of this kid at all and find him, serviceable in the DB, we've had success in finding some undrafted guys or even guys late in the round to hopefully grow into some kind of role. Also, I think everybody's high on having Patrick Surtain and, the team back together back there running that whole deal, because if that's the one unit on defense, I don't think we're going to see it take a step back unless there's massive injury. You know what I'm saying? That's it. That's what it would take.
No, I agree with you. I'm on board with that. I love the Sam Madison and Pat Surtain being back together, coaching up the secondary. I think that's fantastic for nostalgia reasons, and hopefully it works out for coaching reasons as well. But I see the point. We've got to bulk up the defense here. I mean, we got a comment in the comments. Go figure.
Comment in the
That's
comments.
where they usually come in. A comment in the comments from Mike Skalski, who's watching here live. He says, if we do some trades, we can't forget the defense. And that leads me to a question from Josh Ritter on YouTube. And he says, if Nakobe Dean falls to day 2, would you be good with the Dolphins putting a package together to trade up to get him? I don't know if that's going to be something that is going to be within the Dolphins' reach, because I mean, they would really have to probably move up to early round 2 to get him. This is the linebacker from Georgia, for those who aren't familiar with Nakobe Dean. But with the Dolphins being at 102 and 125, they might have to look into using some of next year's draft capital to move up to get to Nakobe Dean. And if they've got eyes on a player like that, and they believe that is somebody who can, be an impact player, but I mean, then by all means go for it. But if you start using some of that premium draft capital that the Dolphins have next year in order to move up this year, you're looking at something very different from what you would expect from that player, as opposed to somebody that you're drafting at 102. Remember, and we've said on this podcast all the time, we talked about it in last offseason. When you've got all that draft capital, it's good for a few different things with those picks. You can use those picks to draft players. You can trade them for more draft picks, or you can trade them for other players, right? That you already know. We've seen this season already, the Dolphins have traded those picks for another player, bringing in Tyreek Hill. We saw last year They traded those picks for more picks. This is Chris Grier wheeling and dealing. So that's the question. How would you feel about the Dolphins putting a package together to trade up into probably, realistically the early second round to get a guy like Nakobe Dean if he were to fall out of day one? Chris, I'll go to you first.
So if it's a hypothetical and we're going to put like a number of what the cost would be. So say it's anywhere in the second round, but it costs all the draft picks of this year plus the third from New England, then yeah, I'd say go get it. If that could happen, if you told me these draft picks and the third from New England to go get a player like Nakobe Dean, somebody who you're expecting to win a starting role before the year is done, not to mention, and I say this a lot on my show, a lot of people give Jerome Baker some trouble because he loses on some snaps. But if Jerome Baker went down in this defense, you would see how valuable that guy is from what they ask him to do. So just having a future on our linebacking unit, it would be nice for a guy like Nakobe Dean to be on this football team. But again, showing some love to Chris Grier as I do kind of often is I have full faith that even after the draft, you're going to see cuts. You're going to see undrafted guys. He's been able to find, free agents and UDFAs that have put in good work for this team. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys come on this team and get cut and have starting roles in the NFL that we're wondering why aren't they on our football team, especially on the offensive line. Chris Grier himself said that this offensive line is deep. So he might be thinking of some of these guys later down in the draft as far as offensive line goes. I do like, to me, if you had to put what was number one and number two, it's center and linebacker, 1A, 1B. That's pretty easy to shout. But if you're sitting there with that third pick and one of these top running backs is sitting there, like you said, or one of these top DBs, then yeah, you worry about that later. It's a third round pick.
At a certain point, and we've seen Chris Grier has no problem with shooting first and asking questions later. We've seen that before. Brain, what are your thoughts on that?
So, not just Nakobe Dean, but also, if it's a defensive lineman, whatever the player is, like, you don't have very many picks and you don't have very many needs to fill because this is where you're at the team building process now. You're not at that process now where you need 11 draft picks to fill out your roster. So the same way the philosophy needed to be this offseason and free agency, target your guys and get your guys. The draft should be the same way. You don't have very many picks, but you do have ammunition, and you don't need to look. You got 2 first-round picks next year, and you don't really need to use those to get up into the second round. But you have a second-round pick next year, and you have 2 third-round picks next year, and you're gonna have not very much in the way of cap space at the end of this year. The majority of your roster is going to be the same this year to next year. So you're not going to, with all the draft picks you have next year, you're probably not going to use all of those. So if you've got a guy that's there in the second round, like if this is a guy that you can add to your defensive line, which I think is another position that should not be overlooked. And I think a lot of people in the comments section and a lot of people on Twitter are right. When you look at our depth on the D line, it's not great. It's very top heavy. Everybody loves our starting defensive line with, Christian Wilkins and Raekwon Davis in the middle and Jalen Phillips on one end and Emmanuel Ogbah on the other end. And they like that Sealer is that guy that can fill in on the inside. But then what do you have?
Jenkins is a good stopgap kind of guy and filler, but it's not a future. You're right. And plus you got to think, are the Dolphins going to pay Christian Wilkins all that money? Because he's going to demand big time money.
Yeah, and so that's another thing that needs to be considered, and another reason why defensive line should really be a priority, aside from the fact that defensive line just in general is extremely important. Like you talk all the time, we talk about how the game of football is won in the trenches, and the Dolphins have lost on the offensive line for decades now. because the game is won and lost in the trenches, and the Dolphins have sucked on that side of the field. But we've been pretty good on the defensive side of the ball because we've been pretty consistent about putting together a good defensive line. We have a nice top-heavy defensive line, but if you can add yourself another player to put into that rotation and another player that can give you a contingency plan, if it doesn't work out and you can't come to a reasonable contract extension with Christian Wilkins, if Christian Wilkins has another big year this year, you're going to want to address that. That's not something that you're necessarily going to want to leave to next year if you don't have to. So again, whether it's a stud linebacker, whether it's a center, whether it's a defensive lineman, whatever the position is, whoever the player is, I think if the Dolphins fall in love with the guy, then you do what you need to do to go get him within reason.
I think between the two of you guys, and maybe I contributed too, I don't know, but I think you got me pretty fired up about this draft here, even though the Dolphins don't have anything to do until the end of the second day of the draft, which is great. So hopefully some of these people out here listening on the podcast and watching live on YouTube, they're starting to, maybe get a little bit fired up about this draft as well. And maybe they're going to sit through some things on the first day of the draft. I think it's highly unlikely we see the Dolphins make a pick on the first day of the draft, but maybe
that would be nuts if by some way we're in the first. I don't know how happy I would be for something like that. There's not really, because it would take both first round picks, probably more to jump up like
more
that.
trouble than it would be worth.
Yeah, I'm not really feeling all that. I'm more interested to see what the division does. Do the Jets trade for Deebo? Do they make that happen? By all accounts, Deebo Samuel doesn't want to go to the Jets, from what I'm hearing.
Well, who could blame him? I mean, honestly,
exactly.
Who could blame him?
Who could blame him? Well, where he wants to be. He's made that pretty clear. He definitely wants to be down towards this direction. He's made. I just
don't know that there is. I don't know that it makes financial sense for the Dolphins to make that move. I don't think it makes sense. Like it would be a ridiculous wide receiving core, but I just don't know that it makes sense at this point. Dolphins wide receiver room is looking really good, and I mean they've already got one of the best top two wide receiver combos in the league.
I agree.
And I don't know how you
can is overkill, but I have like a little bit of a motto I live by. Overkill is underrated. If you look at how the Dolphins are projected through Vegas right now, and you put Deebo on this team, now Vegas is putting odds on them making the playoffs. Now we're in contention on paper. Do I think it might be money overspent? Maybe, but if day one comes and goes and Deebo doesn't change teams, the likelihood of the Dolphins being in for the race for Deebo goes to potentially number one, because they have those picks in the first round. This is where he wants to be. He's made that pretty clear without coming out and saying it, wearing Dolphins colors, being in Miami, hanging out with Dolphins players and clubs, all that stuff. So I'm just saying it's something to keep your eyes on as far as in the first round goes.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Here we go.
Let's say you had to give up a first round pick, another pick later, and Mike Gesicki for Deebo Samuel.
Bye, Mike.
And then you've got to sign him though, because now you got to pay him too.
Yeah, I would take that deal because two reasons. One, it'll put, there's not a defense out there that's going to be okay. Even if you double team two guys by some way, you have no safeties, that means one of these three guys is either free or manned up against your worst guy. And you just paint by numbers as far as facilitating the ball and just torch people all day. You can say goodbye to Mike in that instance. And would it probably end up costing you the finances to afford a guy like Christian Wilkins maybe in the future? That's something I can see in ramifications. All the more reason to trade him alongside. Just Chris Grier, to me, wouldn't mortgage the future, but no one could deny what it would look like on paper going against. right now, defensive coordinators are going to have fits figuring out what they're going to do. If you put that third piece on there, they do exactly what every Tua fan of the Dolphins has been saying they want. Build a Alabama offense. Everyone's like, well, you can't do that in the NFL. Well, you put Deebo on this team, there you go. You got it. You got an Alabama offense when you measure it from paper to the defense as you would Alabama's offense for 90% of the foes. That's just how it is. And to me, that does something else. If, depending on what's bought and paid for it, if Tua doesn't work out, there's every quarterback that's potentially free agent or anyone worth their salt, everyone and their mother's trying to come here and take that quarterback job because of these weapons. This is the new age of the NFL. Believe me, I don't like it. Is this what I want to do? No. This is not how I know how to build football. I want to build through the draft. We understand that there's sacrifice seasons and this. These guys get injured too often. They cost too much money. You got to figure out a window to tear down, build up, strike, and you got to make a 3-year window. That's what you got to do. And then kind of maybe reassess. Hopefully you can get lucky through building through the draft again. But it's kind of like this weird teeter system.
But it does set some, and listen, we can have this fantasy all day because I think it's interesting. And I think there are absolutely ways to imagine that happens. But the fact of the matter is, if you bring Deebo Samuel in, right, and this is a guy who's going to cost you more money than Mike Gesicki, right? It's going to cost way more than Mike Gesicki would cost you.
2.5 times.
Yeah, he's going to cost you a lot more than that. So it's going to set you up to have a really exciting offense. But then let's not forget that you're not going to be able to pay some of these guys on the defense, and I think it has the potential down the road to expose the soft underbelly of the Miami Dolphins defense if you're putting so much money in at wide receiver. Not to mention that at this point, if you're paying Deebo Samuel as well, and let's say Tua lights it up this year with those 3 guys, right? Now you're at a situation where now you got to look at what are you going to do with Tua, because you got to pay him. You got to pay him next, right? Because that's coming down the line also. So listen, we could do the Deebo Samuel conversation, and I think there's a lot of conversation to have about it. But we've got something else that I want to talk about here on the show tonight, so I'm going to get to that real quick. We're going to do our assessment of Chris Grier, but before we can do our assessment of Chris Grier, we have to talk about our very good friends at Manscaped.
Nice.
Now, Chris, I know you're in Florida, right? You're on the west coast of Florida. Have you started your spring cleaning yet? I mean, you're in Florida, so it's more like late summer cleaning.
Yeah, in Florida, you cannot allow yourself to get behind on your cleaning around here. You can find yourself overwhelmed in the swamp, for lack of a better term. So you need to keep your vegetation down to a minimum, have respect. I'm a married man, so I make sure to be a good husband.
It's important, right? And now that spring has sprung, the global leaders in below-the-waist grooming have the best tools for cleaning aisle 5 in your pants. It's time to clear out your winter bush and join the other 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code Dolphins Talk. Manscaped has the full package you need for spring cleaning this year. The Performance Package 4.0 is the only tool you need to keep your boys looking and smelling like the fresh tulips your partner wants. There's another joke available to me right now, but I'm going to pass it over it because this is something of a family show. To start your spring cleaning, use Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer to get the most precise shave on your hedges. Did we mention it's waterproof as well? Yes, we did, because it is. And you can also clean your holes and smell the spring air with the Weed Whacker, you perverts. This nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin-safe technology, which helps prevent nicks, snags, and tugs in all of those delicate holes. We're talking about your nostrils. Okay, they've also got their liquid formulations, the Crop Preserver, Crop Reviver. It's all good stuff. It's incredible. They've got the cologne as well, the body wash, the shampoo. Take advantage of it, folks. Go to manscaped.com. Use the promo code Dolphins Talk. Save 20% off. Get free shipping. And The other thing is, it's still April as we're recording this. It is still Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, and Manscaped has partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to bring awareness to testicular cancer, men's health, and early cancer detection. Manscaped is committed to raising awareness for the most common form of cancer in men aged 15 to 35 and giving support for fighters, survivors, and families impacted by testicular cancer as part of their We Save Balls initiative.
God
So
bless him
smell.
on that, man. The silent killer of men, bro. That and prostate, man. God bless him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So shave your balls, check your balls, and get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code Dolphins Talk at manscaped.com. It's 20% off, free shipping with the promo code Dolphins Talk at manscaped.com. It's time to throw out your old hygiene habits and upgrade your life with
Yay.
Manscaped. So there it is. That's the Manscaped ad read. Got that out of the way. It's always
That
a
was
lot
a
of
good
fun.
one. Knock out of the park.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. I only a couple times tripped up on it, but what are you going to do? This is we do this live. I'm not doing this in, doing 20 takes of it beforehand and then choosing the best one. No, we do it live, baby. That's how we do it at Dolphins Talk. So, all right, let's shift our focus here a little bit away from the draft specifically. And I think there's going to be some fireworks here, folks. So I might just set this one up and then get out of the way. But I want to talk because I feel like this is a really great opportunity to talk about Chris Grier in general, because I think Chris Grier, well, at least the perception at this point among Dolphins fans is that people are thrilled with Chris Grier. Whereas about a month and a half ago, everybody was all set with Chris Grier. But then he brings in Teron Armstead, he brings in Tyreek Hill, he sets the Dolphins up with a very exciting offseason. And now suddenly everybody is fully on board Chris Grier train. Last episode, we had the conductor of the Chris Grier train, Charlie Touche from Go Time Dolphins here on the show. And now we've got El Capitan of the, I guess it would be the Chris Grier yacht or something.
Yeah,
Intercontinental or something like that.
Not to be confused with the
We're out
Stephen
here
Ross
pirating,
yacht.
looking for the booty.
Right. Let us be clear. This is not the Stephen Ross yacht. That's a very different yacht.
No. That's on the other end of the marina. So,
Yeah, you can't listen, because of certain things that have transpired on that yacht. We're not allowed to talk about it legally. So
alleged yacht.
Allegedly.
It's alleged yacht. Yeah. It
Alleged,
might even,
right.
yes, an alleged yacht. For me, I and back when everyone was, burning down, wanting to storm the castle, for lack of a better term, with Chris Grier going, he's doing nothing, everything like that. And right after that, it was Teron Armstead. Then it was, Hill, everything. To me, I never got off him. I thought, you know what? He's just playing it smart. There's probably some of these guys that are getting signed in other places and or, signing with their own teams. They've probably inquired about, wanted to get here, but immediately took care of business, worked it out with Agba, which underrated signing, and pass rushers, for anyone who doesn't know, 28, 29, 30, 31. That's when they go off. That's when everything slows down. That's when they've got all their moves. They know guys. They start getting matched up on younger guys and take it to them. They become the elder statesman. Agba, I think, was, they had priority, and he really, for lack of usual operations of Chris Grier, he was very candid. He said, listen, we want to take care of business in-house, mentioned about working things out with Xavier Howard, took care of that business. And of course, we want more. We always want more. We're Dolphins fans. But I think also another thing is he has to not only navigate the scouting department. We discussed this backstage, but he has an owner he has to navigate too. And we've seen tons of people come in and just, they've got the money. They want to spend it. They want to justify the title, justify the job. The hard road is to do what he did and to clear out cap, maneuver the draft where we have capital. And essentially right now, although our books look like, there's no cap space and all these other things, it's really not the case. we haven't restructured or shook down anybody. There's so much more money available than people really get to understand, because breaking it down in the simplest way possible, I have full faith that he has control over this roster, as far as there's no more of this power struggle. There's not, what are we doing? There's an actual plan, and they have committed to it. Blew this team up to the sticks, try to build back through the draft. Any contracts they were signing were done in a way that they could move off, because this was the year that they were going to not draft, because it's a terrible draft. And COVID kind of threw this plan a little bit, but Chris Grier, light on his feet, made it work and spent big money. And I know, some people want to say maybe it's what he needed to do to save his job. And Aaron, you kind of said that, and that can be perceived as such. But I think at just as much as he's doing it now, I think it was always the plan to spend now.
Brayton, this is your chance to respond.
All right. So I'm going to preface this by saying, look, I have no problem with what Chris Grier has done this offseason. I think he's having a great offseason. So I give him a lot of credit for it. The thing is, we haven't done anything. Like, really, we have not done anything. I said this in the last episode when I was getting all excited and I was venting to my wife about how excited I am. And she said, wait a minute, have they played a game yet? And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, they haven't played a game yet. So what are you so excited about? And that's when it really hit me, like, yeah, I do this. We do this all the time as Dolphins fans. Flashback to 1 year ago. Mm-hmm. Granted, we had a lot of draft picks, so we were excited about that. But everybody was excited about the product that the Dolphins are going to make the playoffs this year. This is the first year that there's expectations. We came out of the gate 1-7. we went 9-8 last year, and now you're going to get the Chris Grier apologists that say, well, that's not Chris Grier's fault, that's Brian Flores' fault. And then you're going to get the people that say, well, Brian Flores brought in some of these guys. And this has been this thing that Chris Grier has been Teflon, where somehow he only gets credit for the good picks, but the bad picks are all on the coach and he had nothing to do with it. And I'm saying, well, he's the GM. He gets credit for all of it. And, you could sit there and you could say, well, when he wasn't the GM and Tannenbaum was in charge, then, you can't put everything on him. But you've got people here that are Chris Grier apologists that even when Chris Grier was not the GM, will say, well, Chris Grier was the reason why we found Xavier Howard and Kenyon Drake and everything. And that's not because of Mike Tannenbaum. So it's just like they pick and choose. But the bottom line is this. The Dolphins were the 8th seed in the AFC last year. And we all are very excited. And we all believe that there's a high ceiling for this team this year. And I'm one of those people. I think the Dolphins, if everything clicks, can be a contender this year. Not just a playoff team, not just a team that wins a playoff game, but a legitimate contender to win the AFC. And let's face it, if you can win the AFC, you can win the Super Bowl. Look, the Cincinnati Bengals were in the Super Bowl last year. So all bets are off. There is a world, and it's not like some crazy 1 in a million alternate universe where the Dolphins can be in the Super Bowl next year. And that's very exciting.
Got chills.
However, there's also a world that many would say is even more likely, given the climate of the AFC, that the Dolphins don't make the playoffs. And if the Dolphins don't make the playoffs, now you've put yourself into a position where you basically, this is your roster. Now, granted, you've got some picks next year and you can use them if ultimately you decide that it's the quarterback, because I think we're all kind of in agreement. If this team doesn't make the playoffs, it's probably because of the quarterback. But let's talk about the quarterback, because this team tanked and they got 3 first-round picks 2 years ago. And, Chris, you mentioned, A lot of the Jaguars, they tanked and they didn't do it right. And the Browns, it remains to be seen. Well, a lot of people are saying the same thing about the Dolphins. The Dolphins tanked, had 3 first-round picks, and their picks were Tua, who we all have question marks on, Austin Jackson.
Right, don't say we all have question marks on, because Tuanon will be all up in the comments.
I'm staying silent.
Okay, rational people all have question marks. I'm not saying he's a bad
Shots
quarterback.
fired,
I'm
Jared.
saying
Shots fired.
we have question marks. If you don't have a question
you're
mark, you're just being a blind homer. So
no, you're right. There's no certainty on Tua, guys. But face it, Dolphins fans. Listen, we all want him to work out. I got your back, Aaron. I'm no apologist on Tua. I've got real eyes. I know football. Listen. Do I believe he can be better? I've seen him play better. I would like him to play better. There is questions on him. A lot about Brian Flores, this and that, and we know how that goes and stuff. And fine. I think there's a lot of good things going, though. Not just all this. You still got that honeymoon period. Even Adam Gase got to the playoffs in that honeymoon period, when he became the new guy in town. And we realized, he didn't really know what he was doing there towards the end. Or I think it's a power thing, too. These guys think that they start knowing everything, a little bit of a God complex. I don't think Mike McDaniel seems to be that kind of cat, seems to have good, self-deprecation in a way, knows how to make fun of himself, be cool, chill out, but we do have expectation. And I think most importantly, Josh, and I'll throw it to you, we don't get to the playoffs, heads are going to roll. Yes, heads are going to roll.
And here's the thing. If we don't make the playoffs, it's because of the draft 2 years ago when we had 3 first-round picks. We could talk about what a great offseason this was. And it, without question, raises the ceiling of this team and makes the team better. But at the end of the day, the core of this team, 6 picks in the first 70 a couple years ago. That's where this team was built. And this team had other opportunities with Chris Grier as the GM to bring in free agents that were going to supplement those players that he drafted, and he's whiffed. He's been awful with his talent eval. The one thing that we'll all agree on about Chris Grier is that he's done a hell of a job structuring contracts. I'll give him that. He's worlds ahead of Mike Tannenbaum, who had us in salary cap hell. But if we don't hit on the picks now, because we have spent the big money this offseason, there is going to be hell to pay down the road. We have built that 3-year window where you've got I think
Chris Grier's insulated even now. If they come and I don't want to say lay an egg, but if they come and miss the playoffs by winning 9-10 games and don't get in, and it'll probably be more obvious of the reasons why. Will it be Boyer, who's the low-hanging fruit in this equation, as far as how I can see? They were trying to go get Fangio, and other defensive coordinators took Boyer. Is it Mike McDaniel? Would he be the low-hanging fruit? Does this offense just not work? Or is everyone running the offense and Tua can't make it happen? Again, Chris Grier being smart enough to insulate himself, which is savvy in itself. To me, the GM, as far as the product on the field, he has very little to do with the wins and losses as much as it's his job to find the talent and placate to who's, I get it, the head coach. You got to defer to them. And maybe he's done it at times to defer to them just to keep himself from getting the axe. But it's worked. And his scouting is pretty good. His scouting is pretty good. So not for nothing, as a Dolphins fan, yeah, would it piss me off a little bit? Yeah, but I gotta hand it to him. It's pretty savvy business moves. So
well, I'll say this, and you've kind of hinted at, because this was where I was going at the end of this, right? Was when Chris Grier became the general manager and Brian Flores was the head coach of the team. It was basically a given that Flores and Grier that their careers in Miami, at least, were going to be inextricably linked with the success of the quarterback that they took number 5 overall in 2020. That was basically the understanding, right? We know now that Grier has somehow found a way that Flores is gone and Grier is still here. The question is, at this point, if it doesn't work out this season, for whatever reason, and I think there is an argument to be made that if it doesn't work out this season, that's because of, faults in the foundation from a couple of years ago. And as well as it could be the possibility of, maybe Flores this great.
Let me ask you this question,
Hold
Josh.
on. Maybe Flores was this great defensive mastermind, and now that he's gone, there are problems that Boyer can't figure out how to fix on his own. Maybe that's a possibility. But if this team falls short, it falls short after 2 off seasons where the Dolphins were loaded with picks, and this offseason where Chris Grier ostensibly did everything right. Right? Maybe not completely, but there were these 2 off seasons where they were loaded with picks, signed Will Fuller. Shout out Will Fuller. Congratulations on that $10 million. You really did it.
I need that job.
Right. And then here we are now. So if we fall short, don't you have to look at everything? And let's also not forget, the other things that might be down the road because of an alleged meeting on an alleged yacht in an alleged marina where
the wild card,
and that's still something that's hanging out there, down the road that we may have to answer for at some point as well. But if it doesn't work out, at what point does Chris Grier have to be the guy to be held accountable?
Well, I don't see it happening for one more year because he's well insulated himself and he hasn't boxed himself into any corners. if whatever the reason is for why they fail this coming year or even fall short, because to me, even getting to the playoffs might not save people from either A, losing their jobs or players being moved off of, because this is an all-in window. We've spent the money with this. This is how you get down to Chinatown. You go there full in. So I think we'll know clear. Is it the quarterback? Is it the coach? Is it defensively? Where is the deficiency that's going to be the last bit? And he has 2 first-round picks that are sitting there. The only reason he wouldn't have those picks is because the owner and implications for potential legal ramifications. That's the only other reason where that could happen. But once again, well insulating himself. And I would venture to say that as much as Tua is Chris Grier's pick, I think that's Stephen Ross's pick too. And I think he fell just as in love with Stephen as much as he fell out of love in falling in love with Deshaun Watson. Because I thought it was more his push with Flores and getting pushed around in that. And Chris Grier, that's the one fault I have with Chris Grier, is that he's not stern enough. He's not the kind of guy to go, listen, this is my football team. But that saved his job into only elevation. And it might see him find himself 2 regimes later as the GM, but which, God willing, that isn't the case, that we're still on this course and it's with championships in our future. But I don't know. That's the only thing I dislike, is that he does figure out a way to it not be his fault, Aaron. And I know that's what you're pointing out, but there's no way to bog him down with future capital in drafting, and then vice versa. If he moves off that capital to fix these problems, he's done some magic with those contracts. You turn around, he'll cut 2 or 3 players and go pick up. He's good. As far as GM goes, he provides decent talent and keeps this team flexible. And there's an actual real plan. Now, outside of you lose Chris Grier, we're blowing this whole thing up. And that means everything. Unless you want to give all the power to a coach, which that never really works out. There's always some God complex involved in that.
And I think that's a fair point. And Brain, I'm going to let you jump in here in a minute, but I think it's a fair point because it is basically Chris Grier has done, and we said he's ostensibly done everything right. He's done a masterful job of pivoting this offseason because now he has basically set it up where that if Tua is not the guy now for whatever reason, right? It's on Tua's shoulders this year. Tua's got to take that step, right? And if he can't do it, then Grier has set himself up to be like, listen, I gave this guy everything he needs to succeed, and he didn't do it. So now let me go and find the next solution, whether that's trading for Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson or drafting somebody in the draft, whatever it is, he's setting himself up for that next pivot point. So he has done that masterfully. And to
Foresight.
be fair, and to be fair, he has set this team up in a way that is really good. And I mean, I'm not going to do my preseason projections yet. I'm going to do my way too early preseason predictions when the schedule is released on May 12th. We'll be here. We'll be talking about what the Dolphins schedule looks like. And that's where we'll predict that, are the Dolphins going 12-5 this year? Are the Dolphins going 11-6? What are we doing? How are we making the playoffs? We're going to have that conversation soon. But I mean, as Aaron said just a few minutes ago, we were all exactly on this hype train last year, right? Last year, we were all talking about how the Jalen Waddle and Will Fuller was going to look like what Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle is going to look at this year. We've been here before. But, is it more realistic to be excited now? Yeah, I think so, because the offensive line is taking a huge step forward this year with a couple of key acquisitions. Maybe good question marks, I guess.
There's more heads in the room. There we should be able to see that shake out a little bit better, right, Aaron?
We should theoretically. We should.
Right? The offensive line should be better, but I don't think it's any kind of sure thing. I think we fixed the left side, but there's question marks. Look, is anybody going to be shocked if Teron Armstead misses 6 games?
I don't think if it wouldn't shock, but it's not what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping he makes at least 15 of those games.
Obviously. And I'm not saying I love the Teron Armstead pick. And I will say this over and over again. This has been a great offseason for Chris Grier. If things go wrong for the Dolphins this year, it's not because Chris Grier had a bad offseason. It's because Chris Grier had a bad offseason 2 years ago when the Dolphins had 6 picks out of the first 70. Because you could talk about all you want about everybody could love Robert Hunt and say that was a great pick. Right now, Robert Hunt is the best pick out of the 70, out of those 6 picks in the top 70, and he's not even a Pro Bowler. So it's like he's the best pick out of a bunch of crap. Like we're sitting here, we're praising Brandon Jones because Brandon Jones is a sub-package safety. He is a role-playing safety. He's not a high-ceiling guy. He's a decent pick as a third-round pick. He's a nice player. And then aside from those 2 guys, Raekwon Davis is a very good.
Yeah, I was going to say
Raekwon Davis is
pretty good in that one.
That was a good pick, but. Yeah. At the end of the day, you had 3 first-round picks, and if Tua does not pan out to be, at the very least, a top 15 quarterback, really, if he's not a top 10 quarterback, it's probably not a good pick. But if he's not even a top 15 quarterback, then that's a bad pick. If Austin Jackson,
what about this, Aaron? And I don't mean to cut you off, but pivoting again for Chris Grier. So at the end of the season, and before Flores was fired, a lot of people were talking about, we need to trade to and I entertained it. I had some fun with it too, but I think it was pretty well consensus that the trade value of Tua at the end of the year was worthless, absolutely worthless. By building this team and such, even if we do fall short, at least not for nothing, if they had to move off the quarterback or they believed moving off the quarterback was the best move in the future, his value will be exponentially higher than it was at the end of last year. His value now, perceptively, is higher than it was 2 or 3 months ago.
I don't think so.
I think you underestimate the desperation of another fan base that doesn't have a quarterback. If Carolina goes out of this draft and they don't have an answer at quarterback, what do you think they'd give up for a guy like Tua?
I don't think they're trading a bunch of picks for another team's trash.
Not necessarily a bunch.
2 times in 2 years in a row.
Well,
I think if it doesn't plan out for a team like, I think teams are looking at next year's draft.
Oh, no doubt.
They're saying if we can't get, like, if our quarterback doesn't pan out, teams are doing the same thing the Dolphins are doing, which is they're sticking with their guy. They're going after Deshaun Watson. They're kicking the tires. And then when Deshaun Watson isn't there, they're saying, okay, we're going to stick with what we've got and we're going to give it a year. And if it doesn't pan out, we're stockpiling for next year because nobody's going after anybody in this draft. But at the end of the day, like, Chris Grier can have as good an offseason as he had this year, but ultimately, if the Dolphins don't succeed, it's because of failures that he's made in the last couple of off seasons. And it's not just the first round picks in that 1 year. Like, I mean, that year they had 11 picks.
That's kind of the cost of doing business when you blow everything up and you bring in a weak coaching staff. And even as Brian Flores hiring a coaching staff on a team you knew was going to be dirt in 2019, that was going to be hard. Then as we find out later, apparently Flores is hard to work with. I don't know. That's speculatory. A lot of people believe.
Who brought in Brian Flores?
No, I agree. There is that accountability. But he's, again, finding themselves as failures at the end of next season. The best man to fix it is the guy in the building. So he's not gonna take any of the blame. He'll get one more because anything here in the futures was only available because of him.
Here's what I'll say.
Yeah, but if he's picking the wrong guys every time, then all right. Then Chris Grier is here to do one thing. Stockpile a bunch of picks and then get rid of him so we can bring in somebody else to make the right picks. Because Chris Grier had a great draft. Not a great draft. He had 3 really great picks because the Dolphins had 3 picks in the first 32, and he did it right this time versus doing it wrong 2 years ago. And then he completely shit the bed. The rest of the draft in trading up for getting Liam Eichenberg and then drafting Hunter Long and completely, ignoring not just other needs, but reaching on guys. And like I said at the top, when he's reached on guys, it hasn't worked. So basically, the only time it's gone well for Chris Grier is when he's done what everybody said that he should do. In which case, how does that make him a genius? I could have made those picks.
So the genius move is that he keeps keeping his job. That's the genius, man.
I'll give him that. That's the genius move. That's the genius move. Blaming it on other people.
And listen, I don't really cut you off, Josh. I'll wrap it up quick with this. Is if he's not GM, it's because he's become football czar and someone else is a head coach with GM powers. That's how that'll work. That
is a very Dolphins move too.
To move him out of the
very same old Dolphins move. So here we go. Here's what I'll say. We're in the middle of yet another Chris Grier pivot. As a Miami Dolphin fan, that's all we've done for the last 20 years is pivot. We pivot from one thing that failed to another thing that failed, to another thing that failed, to another thing that failed. And they're constantly the same old Dolphins. My hope, I don't know that I believe it just yet, but I will say for sure that my hope is that this year at last, the Miami Dolphins will not be the same old Dolphins. Hopefully at this point, by the time we get through this draft and we get through the rest of this offseason and we get into training camp and we get into the regular season, hopefully at last, the Miami Dolphins will not be the same old Dolphins. And this entire conversation will be moot. That's my hope. That's what I want. But the thing is, there's no football to talk about right now. It's the offseason. It's all speculation. So this is what we do. This is what we talk about. We all want the Dolphins to win. We all think there's and I think we can all say there is a realistic expectation this year and we're not like Aaron said, and I got chills when he said it, but I think there is absolutely 100% a timeline that exists where the Miami Dolphins find themselves in the Super Bowl this year. It's absolutely real. Is it likely? Is it more likely than the Dolphins finishing 9-8 again and missing the playoffs? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. But it's still a real possibility, and that's the thing that gets
or
us
us winning
excited.
10 games and still not getting in.
You know, I mean,
Seem to
maybe
be
we
the only
find
team
another
that
way to
gets
do
that.
to be 10-7 and miss the playoffs. You know, it's all possible. But the fact is, in the offseason, it's all fantasy. We're all speculating. We're all figuring it out. We're all doing our best to talk about what we think is the right thing to do. And whether that's supporting Chris Grier, no matter what, whether that's questioning every move that Chris Grier makes, whether that means liking this signing and talking about it, whatever the case is, we're all in this together. We all love the Miami Dolphins, and we're all hopeful that this is the year that they are not the same old Dolphins. I want to send a big thank you to our good friend Chris Adams, El Capitan, the Fins Tailgate. Why don't you tell the people where they can find you?
So I'm on Twitter at the Fins Tailgate. I'm also on YouTube, the Fins Tailgate, 4 words, El Capitan. You can find me, drop a couple episodes a week. Got a couple of other shows that we do on there. You know, try to keep up on all the good stuff, make it fun. It's a late night show, so it is a little bit of off the rails as far as how we get down at the tailgate, but it is a tailgate party. All are welcome. There's only but a few rules, and kind of like how Josh is, there's as much disagreement as welcomed. But as long as everyone plays and understands that this is about love, this is about a fan base trying to work out the abusive relationship of being Dolphin fans, and we can commerce amongst each other on every which way. And Josh, I'm having deja vu because I remember listening to you on the podcast last year before I started doing the show, and you were like, the show's Same Old Dolphins. Maybe we'll be here next year. This is exactly what you said. Maybe we'll be here this time next year saying we got to change the name of the show from the Same Old Dolphins to something else because they're not the same old Dolphins. Fast forward a year later, we've got a completely different coaching staff and everything, dude. It is exactly the same old Dolphins. We are stuck in a spiral of just round and round we go, this merry-go-round, but maybe not. Maybe not. Hope is a powerful thing. Thank you so much, man, for coming on or having me come on. I mean, you know, I really appreciate it.
And we'll have to get you back again as we get a little bit closer to the regular season. Brain, why don't you tell the people where they can find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Aaron the Brain.
And I am, of course, at Amplified to Rock. The show is at Same Old Dolphins. Every episode of the show is available at dolphinstalk.com. So make sure you're visiting dolphinstalk.com each and every day. We got a Tyreek Hill jersey contest going on over at dolphinstalk.com. So if you're interested in winning a Tyreek Hill jersey, head over to dolphinstalk.com and enter, and make sure you're visiting the site every day, because all kinds of news and updates over there at dolphinstalk.com. Download, rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, all the normal places where you get your podcast. Like this video on YouTube. Even if you're listening on the podcast, go to YouTube, pause the podcast, go to YouTube, hit like on the video, share, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you never miss a live show from everybody here at Dolphins Talk. And we've got some coming up. I've been having some conversations with Mike over on Dolphins Talk. Got some good things coming your way here on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. So make sure that you have hit subscribe and turned on notifications, because you don't want to miss out. And that's going to wrap us up. So we'll be back sometime after the draft, probably next week, maybe not next week, maybe the week after that. Maybe we'll take some time, do some film study on whoever it is that the Dolphins end up with, and we'll be back after that to talk about where the Dolphins go, how they did in the draft, and what happens next. But until that happens, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will talk to you again next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Go Dolphins!